actually, let's go to the question of how can we better integrate federal facilities into the community. I mean, that's a, one thing is siting, and the second thing is how does that facility actually relate to the surrounding environment? And I don't know, what kind of, experience do we have there, and where are we going policy-wise?
I'll try to get to that, but I do have to do a quick follow-up. It's all tied together. I can't put myself in Bob's shoes, and, I can't fully appreciate all the pressures that he feels or that GSA feels from Congress and from all the powers that be. I have my own at a local level, right? And we all do. But I sit here and I hear the conversation, and I read the executive order. And the executive order, in principle, gives the federal government the framework in which to be effective in developing long-term decisions. And, we can't rely on what is sprawl? What is sprawl? Sprawl is following a cheaper piece of land and a development pattern that is not sustainable for community or for the country in the long term. Energy is climbing up the list. It's a security issue. So here I sit and I think, are we going to rely on the private sector to sort of change that philosophy and pull this country in the right direction? And yes, to some degree, the private sector may, and is starting to make, with ULI and others, some better decisions, no doubt. But the federal government, if the federal government can't look long-term, and if the federal government can't look at the real total cost, not just the land cost, then who can? We have to do that. That is the role of the federal government, to think of those externalities, security in the context of energy, security in the context of sustainability, creating a livable community. I really sit here and think, if we can't do it and we are just going to go to the cheapest plot of land. In Arlington, I'm told the prospectus rents, are sort of equal to a suburb, a more distant suburb. Our rents are, more equal to parts of DC at this point in our corridors. And I'm not sitting here really talking about Arlington only. As I've said before, I tend to put my regional hat on. And I don't care where they go, if they go to facilitate the long-term sustainable development of the region. And if we can't follow the executive order and find a way to do it, then I think shame on us.
Do you want to follow up on, I appreciate that, on integration, and I'm going to ask one more question and then want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions.
Yeah, I'll just point to the transportation piece then again. When you say what makes it work you don't need first floor retail everywhere, but you certainly need it in key places around transit. You have to have first floor retail. You have to deal with parking and subsidization of, here we have the Reagan building in the center of town at Metro Center with overparked and free parking. That's just not useful. You at least have to continue this equalization of parking and transit subsidies that we've finally got for a little while. But the reality is the parking, the subsidy of parking, the amount of parking, the transportation demand management plan put in place at a federal facility, these are all fundamentally important to righting the system and creating a quality of life. First floor retail would be another one, but I'm personally grown to a place where in my community, if we don't have a transportation system that can handle the increased density that is requested, I'm not going to support it. And I don't think the federal government should agree to put something anywhere unless the transportation system, when it opens, is capable of supporting that facility.
I don't think we have any dispute about that. However, it's easy to say that the executive branch of the federal government by itself makes decisions about where things go, or that GSA by itself makes decisions about where agencies in the executive branch go, because in fact they have their own, first of all, agencies have their own views of where they can perform their missions better, and we're having, I'll just say, lots of interesting discussions with federal agencies about where that is. There are in the public sector, as well as in my experience in the private sector, there is always a reluctance for a group of people to move from wherever they are. It's almost no matter where they're currently located, that's the place that God intended them to be. And anything else is at least a violation of their rights, if not their very essence. So there's always that. But the second thing is that, and we all ought to just sort of face up to this, that while we are using carbon footprint calculators and trying to do commuting analyses to show that having a location in one place as opposed to another is better for the environment in the long run, in the short run, for major procurements, we have to go to Congress for approval. And whether they're leases, in which case they go to the, in either case, large projects go to the Senate and House Public Works Committees. And and I'm not shirking our obligation, we have to do a better job of describing the trade-off between upfront costs and long-term impacts. But in case you haven't noticed, in this country at the moment, short-term impacts are trumping long-term planning.
I did caveat.
Most everywhere
I
you,
caveated
most
my
everywhere you look.
whole statement with not appreciating everything you deal with. I totally understand. Let me just throw one example out. I mean, just a funny thing. And I know the challenge of siting. In my community, I always say the only thing harder than siting a fire station near a community is moving one that's already there.
That's right. So I think that the one thing I'll just say is that there are the people in this room. I mean, this is not I want to be really clear. This is not a political statement, but in Washington we have a tendency to rely. We all know the executive orders and the regs and all that. You go to other parts of the country, they don't even know the difference between a law, an executive order, and a reg. But here we tend to overlook a lot the power of citizen movements to make something happen. So there's a lot of talk about, let's write the guidance to the executive order, which, by the way, we've done and it's really good, and I'm hoping it'll be issued final soon. But there's a real need for people here to have a dialogue about security requirements, about the costs of federal facilities, about where they should be located, and that's got to be a bigger dialogue than just here and just, quite honestly, and just formal protests to the on GSA leasing decisions, which is where they are tending to get argued out.
I'll just kind of add on to the short term, the siting issue. I mean, that's certainly our case with transportation. When the BRAC 2005 movement, it's occurring now, when it's complete, at least on the DoD side in September, most of our installations, we have 5 installations that are BRAC impacted, and all of them are transportation impacted. From your very metro installation of National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda off Wisconsin Avenue. I mean, that's already a congested area right there, and then we're shifting the jobs from Walter Reed to Bethesda. Of course, then that transportation, that traffic flow is going to get worse. So we're forced to have to address it. We have been fortunate for our congressional delegation to work to get additional funding, but will it, solve all matters? No, it won't. The other areas, they all have their own transportation needs. And when that decision was made, there wasn't any federal government money coming in to help address those transportation problems. So we had to take, the low-hanging fruit, the employees, the leadership at these agencies were looking at the state saying, well, what are you going to do to help us out? We already have, a backup at the gate to get, 45 minutes our employees wait in line just to get in at the gate. Well, they only think up to the gate and not beyond. So then we had to shift dollars of the few transportation dollars that we do have in this economy from our long-term to now addressing that low-hanging fruit. What can we do immediately to alleviate some of the traffic congestion at these 5 installations? And of course, all 5 are saying we're the top priority. All regions, all those counties saying we have the #1 traffic problem, we need the money. So that has been a challenge, and the Department of Defense has a program, the DARE program, Defense Access Roads, and that's the only program that the Department of Defense seems to have that helps provide transportation money. And it's just roads. It's not for transit. And that's something that I know our congressional delegation and our state has asked the Department of Defense to consider. Consider the transit side. And it's a small pot, and it's a pot for, all installations across the nation. And so everyone's fighting for this small pot of money, and it needs to be expanded. On how federal facilities and the federal government can better work together and integrate themselves through public-private partnering, I think it's an absolute must. That's what each and every one has to do now. And when, I know that our governor, O'Malley in Maryland, has his own mandate for energy, so does the federal government through the executive order. DOD in 2008 took on a very aggressive mandate. By 2025, 25% of their energy consumption would come from renewable sources. And DOD is the federal government's largest energy user. 80% of all energy that's used by the federal government is out of DOD. And of that 80%, 75% is fuel, 25% is used to operate their 600,000 facilities that they operate across the country and world. So just in looking at energy, I know Fort Detrick out in Frederick, they have a steam sterilization plant. That was a public-private partnership that they did. They've gotten a lot of kudos for that. Aberdeen Proving Ground, their leadership there has taken on the initiative to partner on water. So they're having a shared water with not just the city of Aberdeen, but with Harford County, and also with trash collection. I mean, we just really have to look at any and all ways in which, we can work together to try to help out that bottom line. They're also, when the state looks at energy and renewable sources, I think we need to be partnering with DOD and our federal agencies to see how we can do it together. And I think that's...
Just two quick things on this. One is, and get back to Jay's comment about going into the mixed-use areas. I think one of the things that has changed, and I think Noma is probably a great example of it, is when we talk to the folks about why they wanted to come to Noma, our Harris Teeter grocery store and the fact that we had our apartments going up next door was a big part of the conversation. So I think on individual procurements, there is a paradigm shifting change. I mean, I think it's the infectious disease, NAID, I get it wrong, the one going to Maryland. There is a stipulation, if you're not on Metro, you've got to provide a shuttle bus. I mean, that's an economic driver to give advantage to Metro. So, I mean, I think some of the details are working better to drive into the mixed-use areas because it's where people want to be. And I think Bob's group has changed the way they're looking at that, and I think that'll be a good advantage. I think one of the things that we've learned from BRAC, and I live in Bethesda, we develop a lot in Bethesda. I have girls who go to a small little school that the naval base tries to take over on a regular basis, so traffic's pretty real for us. I think if there's a civilian BRAC, I think one of the things that has to be factored in is it's one thing when you drop even 1 million feet in one particular procurement and you go through it, but when you legislate something as big as a BRAC, nobody has time to deal with it. It's quick, it's instantaneous, nobody's got budgets to deal with it, and if there is going to be a civilian BRAC, I do think the federal government's got an obligation to think more broadly about how it's going to do that, because there's no way Arlington or Maryland or any county can suddenly say, we're the winner, and now I'm going to deal with this large influx, and it all has to happen in 3 or 4 years, because the only thing you can do in 3 or 4 years is build a road. It's pretty difficult to do mass transit. What are your planning horizons for when you want to do more metro? I mean, it's forever.
With the civilian BRAC that's being discussed, because DOD has that formal process in place, the BRAC, I mean, we know with our defense facilities, and will soon be the same across the board with all federal agencies, as Congressman Hoyer has said, if you're not growing, you're going. And there's a constant eye then on that facility to make sure that they are being sustained and they are growing. And the only way that they can grow is with the full support of the region to do so.
I want to go to questions, but I actually did want to ask Bob, since you did raise the specter of civilian BRAC, which sounds different to me than consolidating leasing. But maybe it's the same thing. If you could just share a few words about that, and then I'd like to go to questions.
Well, it takes off from consolidating leasing. The president in the fiscal 12 budget proposed the outline of legislation that would establish a commission to take a look at federal facilities across the civilian agencies in particular, and try to find a couple of things. There are a couple of issues. We have properties around the country and around this region that everybody knows we don't really use terribly intensively at the moment, and we've not gotten rid of for one of a couple of reasons. Sometimes it's because agencies are hoping that someday they'll get the money to use it, fully utilize it. Second, sometimes there are communities that are hoping that they'll get it for free, and they don't happen to qualify under the law currently for a free transfer, so they've stopped us from selling off the property. Sometimes it's a combination of both. So we're going to take a look at some of those facilities and try to get them out of the inventory. But second, really, and probably the more significant in the long run, is recognizing the way work gets done these days, the different ways in which people are laying out offices, more sustainable ways of laying out offices, which typically have to do with fewer private offices, definitely not private offices out on the window where they steal the daylight from everybody else, but more intensive use of space, which should mean, and I don't want to even give you the numbers because I won't remember them off the top of my head, but the amount of space that the government has increased on its leased inventory over the past 10 years is pretty darn huge, and that's something that we need to stop. As we can reduce the amount of space that we lease, we will collapse back into the government-owned inventory the same way that the defense folks collapsed into their own inventories. The final thing to say about it is, of course, I think Lisa alluded to this, it costs a lot of money to upgrade the facilities that are taking more intensive use. And where that money comes from right now, quite honestly, nobody knows. But in this budget climate that, where we came close to a shutdown 2 weeks ago, I can tell you that there are an awful lot of federal agencies coming to GSA saying, oh, well, you have been saying to us before that maybe we're using a little bit more space than we need and it costs us money because they pay us rent. There are a lot of agencies now saying, boy, maybe now we'd really like to talk to you about ways in which we could use a little bit less space and end up paying less in our real estate budget.